All right.
Okay, cool. So, um, this this particular episode is actually something which is surprising coming from me. Uh,
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. You said I wanted to do this topic. I was like, huh?
yeah. So, okay, lately I have been running.
Really? How
Yes,
many
as
treadmills did you guys have to change?
I ran outside. Okay,
How
I
many
ran
roads do you have to
outside.
pave back?
Quite a bit actually. I just saw them fixing one of the routes I used to frequent in my room. Okay, so I've
A
been
kaiju
running
has been here.
Kaiju level 2. Uh, I've been running because I one day had this. I was thinking to myself like, oh, I can't remember when's the last time I ran, you know, and I remember I used to run a lot in high school and in my younger days, and I figured like, oh, it's kind of sad that I don't run as much, or I haven't run in a very long time, and I don't want to lose that ability, that particular aspect of fitness. So, and I also think it's a great way to. I always tell people doing some steps after dinner or after eating helps with digestion.
Mm.
So I figured, okay, you know what? Let me try running a bit more to improve my cardiovascular health, right? And so when I was running, I remember hearing a lot of these uh, runners throw around the word like runners high.
Mm-hmm.
It's they say that, oh, there's nothing better than having a runner's high or the feeling of it and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like the runner's high in my head was equivalent to the having a pump for us.
Okay.
I feel like that's for the pump to us is the high to them. So
I
I
get the
decided
feeling,
to
though.
just read in. Sorry.
Yeah, I too get that feeling when I do my cardio as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I think on some level you and I can relate to what when these people say they have a runner's high. So I decided to read up a little bit more on it, like to actually go down and dive deep into actually is there like scientific reasoning or a
Oh,
scientific explanation.
there's actually a legit explanation to it.
Yeah, there is but I wanted to go into some more like further, like so that I can find a way to explain to our audiences on a
Mm.
simplified way.
All right. All
Yeah,
right.
so I read some I read this one publication and book by this guy who for the life of me I cannot pronounce his name. I think he's Russian. So I'm gonna try later. But anyway, to those of you who have never ran or are not familiar with what it is, the runner's high is a really special feeling that people experience during or after a very long run or intense exercise. Particularly in regards to the context of this episode, it's just runners, right, or any cardio or aerobic type activity where they feel really good, almost as if they're like on the top of the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's also an association of feeling less pain, feeling really relaxed, and more connected to your body and your surroundings. Now, I'm going to talk about on the three different areas in how it pertains to the runner's high. So these areas will become from neurobiological mechanisms, the physiological responses, and the
Mm-hmm.
psychological perspectives on the runner's high. So we're going to start off the discussion about exactly what or why does it happen. Okay, so as I mentioned before, happens during either a very intense or very long bout of running. The neurobiological mechanisms. Okay, neurobiological is basically things like that happen in your brain, the brain chemistry. When you are in this particular state, the things that happen is what we're going to explain right now. So neurobiological mechanisms, right? Now there are a few. Number one is the endorphins and the opioid system.
Okay.
Okay, the endorphins and opioid system. The earliest and the most well known. That's why, like you said just now, there is a scientific study. There is like a legit thing, right? And it goes back very far. It actually goes back very far. The earliest and like the most well known explanation is it involves the release of endorphins. It's basically you get this huge flood of endorphins and neuropeptides. They these things neuropeptides are like small protein like molecules. They're used by neurons. Again, it's nerve cells for those of you that skipped your science class. uh, So again, they are protein-like molecules. They communicate with each other. Very important. They communicate with each other. They act as signaling molecules in the brain and throughout the nervous system. So just remember that. Okay. So these neuropeptides
Mm-hmm.
can influence various function in the body, including pain perception, uh, reward, food intake, metabolism, and very often emotional responses. Okay, so now unlike neurotransmitters, very important. Unlike neurotransmitters, they usually act more quickly and directly between neurons. So there's the difference. All right. But neuropeptides, like endorphins, they act on the brain's opioid receptors.
Okay.
Right, opioid receptors. So neuropeptides often have a longer, compared to neurotransmitter, they have a longer lasting effects and can act on a broader range of cells.
Correct.
So neurotransmitter is from the same cell to same cell. Neuropeptides is for can go to other cells as well.
Yeah, because your neurotransmitters are involved. Like you're talking about your acetylcholine, your catecholamines, like your adrenaline. They're all
Yeah,
involved throughout the sympathetic, parasympathetic system. So they're all over our body, your gut system, your bladder, everything actually involves neuropeptide because that's how the nerves talk to each other.
correct. So,
Yeah.
like for example, the case in which when someone is aroused or anxious, you know how your pupils dilate and stuff, and then in order for it to go back to normal, those are all usually done by neurotransmitters in the
Yeah.
parasympathetic and sympathetic states. Okay, so now some of you, endorphins is one. Other neuropeptides that you guys probably are familiar with is oxytocin,
Okay.
vasopressin, things like that. Those are also another examples of neuropeptides. Okay, so during these like really like prolonged exercise periods, like you're running for a very long time, and as I mentioned, they're more aerobic in nature. The body produces these uh, endogenous opioids to help manage the pain and stress. So just now I mentioned something called opioid receptors, right?
Yeah.
So opioid receptors in the brain. Now, for those of you that are wondering, opioid receptors are like specific, what do you call this, proteins located on the surface of the cells. All right. So they're kind of like gates. They're kind of like gates at the edge of the cells, uh, particularly found in the brain, spinal cord, and other parts of the nervous system.
Correct.
So they play a very crucial role in how the body actually perceives pain and experiences pleasure. So while someone who's doing probably the same distance will be like, "Oh my god, this is so painful. Why are people finding this enjoyable? Who enjoys running?" Another person could be like, "Oh, they actually the pain is their pleasure," kind of thing.
Mm.
It's something like when you're in the flow state of being in a runner's high, which I'll get to that in a bit. So anyway, it can alter the way your body perceives the pain and experience pleasure. What it does is it actually binds to the opioid, these uh, what you call this, neuropeptides. They bind to the opioid receptors, and endorphins can actually uh, help in the mimic in helping reduce pain, which might explain why some individuals um, don't feel as uncomfortable when they run. In
Yeah, because
fact,
endorphins itself, it's the cousin to opioids. Your
yeah,
morphine, your heroin, your tramadol, they're all forms of opioids. So endorphin, the fin at the back is a friend of morphine. So
hmm,
endorphins are opioids. So
yep,
they are naturally occurring opioids. So when they attach to opioid receptors, they give you the same kind of pleasure and pain-free sensation that your drugs will give you.
hmm,
It's our body's innate system to reduce pain.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can explain why sometimes when you're just starting out the run, it can feel uncomfortable, feels a
Mhm.
bit like, oh, your shins are hurting a bit, and then suddenly just like after a while you realize I'm actually running longer, but I don't feel it as much.
You actually feel better.
You feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically your neuropeptides working in place of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second thing when it comes to the neurobiological mechanisms is something called, and this is interesting, endocannabinoid system.
Yeah.
Okay, you hear the word cannabinoid?
Yep.
It's it's pretty cool. It's like your own body's internal THC system, like
Correct.
cannabis system,
Correct.
right? That's why it's like a cannabinoid is like cannabis, right? So recent studies have shifted the focus to the endocannabinoid system, which includes naturally, believe it or not, naturally occurring chemicals that act on the same receptors as THC. Now, THC is this active compound which is found in cannabis, which is also weed, lah. Right?
Yeah.
Cannabis is the more scientific name for weed. So, one particular molecule in this endocannabinoid uh, system is called anandamide. I think I'm pronouncing that right, right? Anandamide.
Yeah.
Anandamide has been so anandamide has been shown to increase the blood's. It has shown to be increased in the bloodstream after prolonged exercise.
Mm.
So when I was reading this particular paper, I actually have it pulled up here. Anandamide can cross the blood-brain barrier and is believed to play a significant role in the feelings of euphoria and reduced anxiety, which is associated with a runner's high. So, because of this one key molecule, basically what it means is that because of this one key molecule, you are quite literally getting high from running,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's like a very natural high. So I feel like people who have smoked weed before would know what this actually feels like.
Do you- Okay, do you think that if they were weed smokers,
Yeah.
do you think that their perception of this high would reduced?
What do you mean? If they
Okay,
were
say for instance, right, if you are a person that drinks coffee,
okay.
drink coffee long enough, 2 cups of coffee don't do it.
Oh, you mean the
Tolerance,
adaptation with the
tolerance.
tolerance? Oh, the
So
tolerance
like,
threshold.
do you feel? I'm wondering lah, will they like lose that runner's high if you actually do smoke weed or something like that?
Oh, that's so interesting because if it acts on the same neural pathways, right? It's
Mm.
but I still feel like they probably wouldn't. They probably just increase if they had a larger increase of concentration of THC. It could still be like
I don't
over.
know. Maybe the receptors get more sensitive.
Yeah, I think they get more desensitized if you're someone who say smokes more weed than he runs. Probably.
We should ask some Rasta fellas after this.
It's like, hey man, do you ever get a runner's high? Yeah, I get high. I don't do run, but I get high. Okay, so now still within the same title topic, there is another thing called the dopamine and reward pathways. Pretty sure a lot of you already, or those of you who are listening that are not familiar with hormones and all these kinds of things,
Mhm.
like neural pathways, neurotransmitter, neuropeptides. I'm pretty sure you've heard the word dopamine before, and you've heard something called the reward pathways, right?
Yeah,
So
of course.
dopamine is basically a neurotransmitter associated with your brain's reward pathways. Okay, it's kind of implicated in the experience of getting high while you're running or the runner's high. Physical activity, so primarily physical activity, uh, particularly for these individuals if they find it enjoyable or they find it like rewarding, like there's an objective at the end of the run, like for example a faster time, a prize, a medal, whatsoever. The stimulation of dopamine in the brain increases. It helps increase the release. It increases the release, and it goes into something called the mesolimbic pathway.
Mhm.
Now, the mesolimbic pathway is also known as another scientific term for the reward pathway.
Yeah, it's the limbic pathway. Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
it's a key neural circuit in the brain that plays a central role in the regulation of reward. Regulation of reward is one, and then a few more other things will be pleasure, motivation, and most importantly, reinforcement learning.
Mm, mhm.
So that's why when you, for example, very simple, every time you tell your kid to do something and then you give them a reward after it, you are sort of telling them that every time they do something, the dopamine in their brain gets released, and because they achieved an objective and they get rewarded
Yeah,
with
so
a
this is
treat.
also the same way you actually get addiction as well.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. So your cocaine, your alcohol, your nicotine, and all actually falls into the same mechanism. Just that running, you have to run in order for you to get it to be released in
So yeah,
in
it's a
addition to
healthy
alcohol.
addiction. It's a
Yeah,
healthy
it's a
addiction.
healthy addiction. Exactly. So when people ask why, like why are you so addicted to going to the gym, this is actually the reasoning.
Yeah,
Okay, because you actually feel good. Yeah.
yeah. And in if you wanted to say the more lighthearted way of explaining, it's because my wife is at home.
Don't get me into trouble, dude.
My wife is at home. I am here. Or my girlfriend's at home. That's why I'm here. Okay. So, but yeah, this particular surge of dopamine, it enhances the mood. But what's very very important is that it reinforces the behavior.
Mm, mm,
So, which means if you're getting good from this, getting a good mood and feeling, it reinforces the habit or behavior of you wanting to continue running.
mm.
All right. So, which is why a lot of people want that hit of dopamine. They want to get their runner's high, and the fact that they look at it is like, oh, I don't have to drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes. I can do something which is healthy, and I get results. Okay. Now, last but not least is the serotonin and mood regulation. Again, serotonin is another key neurotransmitter. Uh, this one is strongly linked or associated to mood stabilization
Correct.
and well-being.
Hmm.
So obviously, like you mentioned just now, when we go to the gym, we get an increase of dopamine and serotonin levels in the brain. It's what's the word for it? The world's most best antidepressant.
Depressants.
Yeah, antidepressants. Or the effect it has when it comes to physical activity, right? Enhances mood, reduces anxiety, reduces stress, and all of these things are also similar to when someone says what or describes what a runner's high feels like.
Yeah, but all
See,
of will go missing when you see in your program there's bugger split squats.
that one is no high. That one is like a
You
runner's
know,
low.
the stress, the stress almost just start flooding again.
Yeah, it's like if you could like power a city with just stress alone, right? Oh my god. Um,
Yeah, but that's true. Yeah, these bouts of hormones that are released or the neurotransmitters that are released is what actually a lot of psychiatrists ask their patients to do on top of taking medication is to exercise.
yeah,
Yeah, this is the very
exactly. So now we've done with the the first part of the explanation, which was your neurobiological mechanisms, right? Now we're going to move on to something which is called your physiological responses. So how does it benefit you, or what happens internally, at least, when it comes to an individual experiencing the runner's high, right?
Mhm.
So number one would be the stress response and your body's hormonal regulation. So prolonged exercise triggers something in your brain called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So HPA for short. Now, what HPA is think of it like a complex network of interactions
Yep.
between three glands in the body: the hypothalamus, which is hypothalamic, the pituitary gland, which is pituitary, and the adrenal glands. So adrenal. So HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal.
Hmm.
All right. Now this is it's all like the axis is all they're sort of networking with each other. They're sort of telling each other do this, do that, or interchanging information. So this causes like the network causes the release of stress hormones like cortisol. You remember you guys had this before, or stress increases cortisol. While chronic stress, okay, chronic being long term stress, uh, is not great. It can be actually detrimental to your body. The acute stress, on the flip side, the acute stress of exercise is managed by the body's adaptive mechanism. So which which means the adaptive mechanism is the release of endorphins and endocannabinoids, right? So keep this in mind. Picture this: your body currently, due to exercise, is raising cortisols. Everybody know, okay, cortisol, bad thing. But because it also, the acute level, raises endorphins and endocannabinoids, these two things actually balance each other and they counteract the negative effects of cortisol. So this balancing, when these things happen and the balancing occurs, that is what contributes to the overall sense of well-being and like the runner's high during and after the exercise.
Yeah, but actually, a lot of people don't understand that your stress hormones are actually very, very important, especially for you need substances for energy, right?
Yes,
So,
correct.
in order for your body to know that it has to release or break down glycogen and fats and those kind of things, in order for you to use it as energy, there is a certain level of stress your body has to go through in order for it to trigger these things to be released. So, cortisol, much like how insulin is vilified at the moment, okay, cortisol is a very important stress hormone that allows you to survive. You don't have it, you might die. Okay, likewise with insulin, you don't have it, you will still die. Okay, you need insulin, you need cortisol, but these things have to work or they need to stay checked. That means a certain amount is released in order for your body to function optimally or your body to deal with whatever stress it's being placed on it. So when you're running, you're exercising, your body is increasing the heart rate, amount of stress. There is going to be a supply of energy that's required. They need to break down sources of energy in order for you to give you the ATP is required for energy. So all of this requires that stress to happen. So
Mm,
without the stress, there's no trigger. So cortisol is not exactly a bad thing. Cortisol is a good thing, but in excess, it's a bad thing. So stress is not the problem. When stress is not managed, that is a problem.
mm,
Yeah. So your body has its ability to handle stress to a certain level. So that's why you have your endorphin systems, your dopamine systems, all of them counteracting to kind of stabilize the situation.
mm,
But it needs to happen. All of this needs to work in sync in order for you to get the best benefits. All
yeah.
right. So we should not see things as good and bad as much as what the media portrays that cortisol is bad. No,
Yeah.
cortisol is important. That is the reason why cortisol is the highest at 8 in the morning. Why? That's the point. You get up. There must be a release of substances. You need the glucose to flood the blood in order for you to start working. Your engines are starting, right? You're not sleeping anymore. So you need that cortisol to be there. So these are the things that are important. So the body, like what you correctly said, the HPA axis, it's there to synchronize these things. Your circadian, your sleep itself affects how the brain, because the hypothalamus is sitting in the brain along with the pituitary. So they will talk to each other when it's time to get up and those kind of things. What needs to be done next?
Mm,
And this circadian rhythm will help the body trigger all of these mechanisms. So that's why the night and day variance is very important. You must have total blackout because all of these things will affect how your brain functions.
correct.
Yeah. So it's much more complex than this is bad and this is good. Yeah. All right.
But obviously, it's at some point somebody tried to simplify things and went a little bit overboard with that, lah.
Exactly. When you oversimplify some things, then you tend to water down the situation too much that you miss the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, there's also the fact that when someone is always like a confirmation bias or survival bias and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, moving on to the next point of the physiological like responses would be oxygen and blood flow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, the increased cardiovascular demand during exercise enhances blood flow to the brain. So the more you're exercising, the more blood needs to flow to your brain. Now, because blood carries oxygen and nutrients, the increased blood flow from the exercise will then increase the production of efficiency and utilizations of the neurotransmitters involved in mood and cognition.
Mm-hmm.
So, because there's a lot more blood that's flowing to the brain, there's a lot more nutrients and oxygen that goes along with it, therefore, allowing the production of neurotransmitters to sort of become more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're getting at max capacity, your place can only have 100 workers. You want to increase production, you get another 100 workers to come in or 1,000 workers, and suddenly you're churning out like product like at a much faster rate, right? And number three, which is the last one, and this is pretty cool. I like this a lot. I learned this in my undergrad when I was studying physio. Neuroplasticity and cognitive function,
Mm-hmm.
right? So neuroplasticity. I remember the first time I heard that, I was going like, "What the hell is that? Is this guy like trying to pull my leg?" Is like, and so this was actually during the time which I was working at NASAM, the National Association of Stroke Malaysia. So we were sort of attached there, and basically neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to sort of reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, right? So it's like it's one of the things that allows you to sort of continuously like grow in a sense or relearn certain lost patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So how this happens or why this is possible is because it actually takes place in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain region which is critical for memory and was it emotions regulation?
Yeah.
Okay, so memory and emotional regulation. Uh, the chemicals released during exercise support this particular neural health connection and may actually contribute to uh, the term was called cognitive clarity, if I'm not mistaken, and emotional resilience, which is again part of what it comes together with the runner's high. So basically, what is it says is that neuroplasticity and cognitive function are all or some of the benefits that you can actually get from achieving or basically long exercise. But even more so if you're someone who's often uh, pursuing that runner's high
Mm.
to a certain degree. Okay, last but not least, the psychological perspective. We're almost at the finish line with this particular topic. The psychological perspectives in or when it comes regards to the runner's high is something referred to as the flow state and mindfulness. The flow state and mindfulness is from a book by this, sorry, not book, but the publication by Mihaly. I don't know. I think I went Arabic for the moment there. I just okay. It's basically published in 1990. Uh, I have money. He's probably from Russia. Uh, so what he said was the state is characterized by a deep sense of enjoyment and intrinsic motivation, further reinforcing the pleasurable aspects of runner's high. Okay, so this psychological component of the runner's high is linked to the concept uh, called the flow or a flow state of mind. It is a complete immersion and focus in an activity. It's like you're going through the waves, you're feeling like your body's lighter,
You're
and
zoned in, lah.
yeah, you're pretty much zone. Is also you can say it's like getting into the zone, which is also a legit scientific thing in the athletic world. So in this particular state, similar to the zone, your perception of time, self, and surroundings become very more either focused or fluid, depending on whether you're in the high or in the zone. So the another thing that also is comes with the psychological perspectives in regards to Rasa is the behavioral reinforcement and habit formation. We've touched about it briefly just now, talking about how people who pursue this particular dopamine hit would further build better and healthier habits.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's behavioral reinforcement to always want to pursue this type of high. It's rewarding. It can create a positive feedback loop in the brain where the anticipation of pleasure and reduce stress. Like for example, you can reduce your stress, you can feel good about doing it. That's like a win-win. This contributes to the development of that particular habit and exercise. It's obviously which is essential. Okay, I think that was it for the psychological perspectives. But to summarize, what we went through is that it's like the runner's high is essentially a mix of natural brain chemicals and regards to your body's response to exercise.
Yeah.
So it's creating this really really euphoric feeling that makes exercise even more rewarding for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, while everyone may not experience it, this is very very important to put out there. Not everyone. It's not like you pick up your shoes now and just go run for outside. You're gonna get it. It does take some time. It actually varies from individual to individual based on things like genetic factors, environmental factors. Yes, it is like current state of mind. If like you're way too stressed, you may not find that you're able to get into that runner's high. It's like for example, you midway through the run you forgot to take out the chicken breast for defrosting. It's like your whole run you're going to be thinking like, oh my god. Yeah,
Yeah. But
so
I mean, that could explain like why some okay, like us as trainers, right? It explains why some clients find it like bringing themselves to the gym is a bit of a drag.
yes,
Okay, and then you will have these clients who are excited to come and work out.
yes,
So I guess once it becomes, I think this could be one of the things which we call habit forming lah. You
Okay.
know, after a while you realize that you're actually getting more enjoyment out of the activity than you think, or causing you displeasure. Eventually it becomes a pleasurable activity for you to like push yourself to this limit for this particular hour or so, and you look forward to that sensation again and again and again. I think much like what we feel when we work out, you know.
Yeah.
And I think until you attain that level, I think it's going to take some time. It will be a little bit of, I need to lift myself into the gym kind of situation,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's everything for my part. Do you have anything to add on?
No, I think that was good. So I
Okay.
think that was a pretty good answer. I think that whatever you've explained about runner side does translate to uh any other sport, I think.
Mm.
Because it's a sport, you're gonna sweat, you're gonna break a sweat, you're gonna put in some effort. So I think it will translate to other sports as well. But definitely the runners have coined this simply because it's something they feel every single time they run lah.
I think it's also a matter of it being more, it's more sustainable, more achievable. To say that you can apply to other sports, I don't think so. Boxing, like you get punched in the face, oh, I get high.
No, I don't think in a combat you will feel that, but when they're doing like their routines,
Yeah,
their bag
yeah,
work and those kind of things, there might
yeah.
be
Getting into
something
the
you can
flow,
feel.
getting into the flow.
Yeah, they're in the flow, right? Especially when you see those people. I love watching those people who are, one person is holding the pad and the other person is just punching with the flow. Like they
Yeah,
know exactly where the hand is coming, where they're moving, and all this. It looks exciting.
it's like dancing.
Yeah, it's like dancing. Exactly, it's like dancing. Yeah. So
Okay,
I don't.
all right. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. Hope you
All right,
enjoyed
guys.
it,
Till the
and
next one.
till the next one.